It's been a month since the incident on New Year's Eve 2022, and I finally got a chance to talk about what happened. We had planned to celebrate the event at my mother-in-law's house, as our relatives from Canada were also gathering there. My wife, children, and I eagerly joined in the festivities. I'll spare you the details of the New Year's Eve celebration and feast, as they are probably similar to what many others have experienced, but I distinctly remember the moment when we set off the fireworks and then returned to the table to warm ourselves with wine. We then went out to the balcony for a smoke, where we continued to indulge in our drinks. Feeling tired, I noticed an empty room adjoining the kitchen with an unoccupied bed and decided to rest there. As the effects of the alcohol began to wear off, I gradually regained consciousness. Without opening my eyes, I instinctively embraced the one I thought was my wife. At first it was a simple embrace, but soon I began caressing and stroking her, engaging in the intimate acts that spouses usually do. After lying together for a few minutes, I rolled over onto my back, continuing to keep my hands on her warm body. It was at this point that I became extremely thirsty, a common occurrence after consuming large amounts of alcohol. When I opened my eyes and sat down on the edge of the bed, I suddenly realized that I was not in the cozy atmosphere of my own home, but still in my mother-in-law's house, and my mother-in-law was lying next to me. My wife apparently did not want to disturb my sleep and went home. Since the other rooms were occupied by guests, my mother-in-law had to sleep next to me. Not knowing what to do, I quietly asked if she was asleep. She calmly replied that she was not. I informed her that I was going to take a shower, and she suggested we move to the other room or the guests would wake up and see us. After walking to the kitchen and drinking about a liter of water, I headed to the bathroom. Although I had fantasized about my mother-in-law before, there was no way I expected it to become a reality. When I returned to the room after my bath, my mother-in-law was no longer there. The only thing that bothered me was that I would have to discuss it with her later, but I didn't want to drag out the conversation. Soon the guests woke up, and even a little later my wife returned. Everyone was gathered around the table again, enjoying drinks, food, and each other's company. Coincidentally, only my mother-in-law and I went outside for a smoke. Gaining courage, I asked her why she didn't stop and wake me up. She replied that she didn't want to cause trouble and that she didn't hesitate when it came to her favorite son-in-law. I was at a loss. The holidays passed and we continued to visit her as if nothing had happened. However, I might decide to visit her more than once in the future. Over the next few weeks, I pondered what to do about the shocking incident with my mother-in-law. Part of me was shocked by what had happened. I had always had a close, loving relationship with my mother-in-law, but I had never viewed her as anything more than family. However, another part of me had to admit that the experience thrilled me in a strange way. I had always found my mother-in-law to be an attractive woman, and the fact that she seemed open to a more intimate relationship awakened a forbidden excitement in me. I considered confessing everything to my wife, but I knew that would cause her deep pain, even trauma. The guilt of this secret weighed on me, but I decided that telling my wife would only ease my conscience by causing her great pain. Finally, I decided to have an open conversation with my mother-in-law. One afternoon, I went to her alone, and we had a frank conversation. She apologized for allowing herself to go too far while intoxicated. I apologized for initiating intimacy even though I had initially mistaken her for my wife. There was an unspoken admission that we both enjoyed what had happened to some extent. However, we agreed that for the sake of my wife and our entire family, it would never happen again. We would put it behind us and not let it damage our relationship. Over time, the strange excitement and awkwardness I initially felt around my mother-in-law disappeared. We have regained the easy, affectionate companionship we have always had. Neither of us talks about that New Year's Eve night or even hints at it. It has remained our secret, locked away. I still love and desire only my wife. And yet every now and then a fleeting memory of that drunken night pops into my head. And I'd be lying if I said they weren't unpleasant at all.